Welcome to a new time. Welcome to a new era.
This ain't WCW. This ain't Monday Night Raw. This ain't SmackDown. This ain't even WWE.
Feel the wrath of the Pythons. You shall feel the wrath of Hulkamania. This is where the power lies.
And that's the bottom line because Stone Cold said so.
He put hard times on Dusty Rhodes and his family.
I got a 66 and 2/3 chance of winning because Kurt Angle knows he can't beat me and he's not even going to try.
It's time to step into the squared circle and get it done.
Wrestling fans, welcome to Legends and Champions, the world's renowned... crap to that. Good afternoon, everybody. Good evening, good morning, good night. Welcome, everyone, to Legends and Champions. Andy here, of course, joining me. That sounded like Gene Oakland. Joining me, making his return after 2 weeks hiatus to Legends and Champions. It's Mr. Drum roll, please. Mike McGuire. Mike, how you doing? Good. No, it's not. It's Stefan Bennett. Stefan, how you doing, friend?
Well, that's it. That's just like disappointed a lot of listeners. I know that much. Yeah. No, I'm good. I'm good. Great to be back. Happy to be back. Do you know, when you was doing that intro where you was just like, oh, that's a bit Gene Oakland, you know, wrestling fan and all that. In my mind, I started having that classical music start playing, the old deal, dum, you know, like they used to do in the beginning of the old WrestleManias, like WrestleMania 9.
Oh, yeah.
You should have that music start playing in my head, and then you just cut it straight off. You just cut it straight off, Andy. Completely ruined the moment.
You know, completely ruined the moment. I think.
But I'm good. I'm happy to be back. Yeah.
Well done. We've had a couple of weeks where it's been solo shows. TNA Unbreakable 2005 and the XWF The Lost Episodes. Now, before we crack on with today's topic, which goes from bad to worse.
It's an understatement.
I kind of want to get your take because, you know, obviously you weren't here. We were planning to do those shows. I kind of picked them up and done them. There was another show that I was planning to tape because I didn't know when you were going to be coming back.
Yeah.
But in the end, we've actually decided we're going to take that one together. We're going to do that Breaking the Fourth Wall tomorrow. So believe it or not, we got like a month's worth of content already recorded.
I know, right?
Mike is going to be so happy. Mike's going to be so happy.
I have to say, to be fair, you know, it sucked having to be away. I wasn't feeling particularly well. I do have my health conditions. I'm fine now. I appreciate you know, you reached out to me off air a few times just to check in on me. I appreciate that. And, you know, I've missed it. I'm just so happy. And, you know, I'm so happy we are doing this particular show because, as you know, because I watched the majority of it this past week and I watched like the last sort of hour of it this morning. And yeah, let's get into it.
I mean, that's the best.
That's hilarious.
That's the best half hour, right? But before we do that, before we get into this, and we are talking about the debacle known as Heroes of Wrestling, I want to get your very brief opinion. TNA Unbreakable 2005. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago on the show. Well, I talked about it. We spoke. It was a very different show, that one, because instead of breaking the card down and really kind of going into detail, we looked at the business at a point when we talked about it. Did you know, and I know you do because you've listened to the show, 775 fans were in attendance in the Impact Zone for that pay-per-view. And it was a transitional point between not having a TV deal and going on Spike 4 days later, with the big main event being the X Division, which really kind of elevated it. What's your memory of TNA Unbreakable? Where do you think it sits? What's your opinion of TNA back from that time?
I mean, as you said, it was that transitional period. Obviously, it wasn't great crowd, but then again, TNA have almost become synonymous over the years now. And same thing when they turned to Impact of not having large crowds, which, to be fair, a lot of people like that. It's a more intimate setting. Definitely goes against the grain of, you know, the other big promotions and that. But no, I remember. I mean, one match that sticks out of my mind from memory probably because it's still quite raw because we've obviously lost him recently, was Sabu against Abyss. That for example. I mean, but if you look at people that were on there, and where they went on from there, you look at people like Roderick Strong, who went against I think it was Austin Aries, and we've seen what's happened with Roderick Strong. Do you know what? Actually, the guys of Undisputed Era in their NXT title, it's very raw with me because obviously, as we know, when they all left NXT, WWE, and kind of Adam Cole and went to AEW, and then Roderick Strong went to AEW, Kyle O'Reilly went to AEW, then Bobby Fish eventually showed. It's the fact that their careers have never really been the same again. I mean, arguably you could say Adam Cole's been up, down. I mean, I know he's had his health and injury issues. He had the concussion issues, which was a great shame because I'm a big Adam Cole fan.
Baby.
But I'm really baby, and I'm even to this day I'm still very disappointed that their careers have kind of, for the most part, especially the other three, aside of Adam Cole, have sort of plummeted a bit, quite dramatically since they left WWE because they were great. But I remember there was a. I'm trying to remember. Raven had a match, wasn't there? There was a Ravens rules match, wasn't there? Against.
So this is really cool. This is what we were trying to get at in this show, right? It was so memorable that you can't remember it. So that's enough on TNA Unbreakable. If you haven't listened to it, go back into the archives. One of the other thing that we talked about in the second week was the XWF. In particular, the Lost episodes, right? Now, for those of you who don't remember, this was the promotion set up by, I didn't know this at the point, Jimmy Mouth of South Hart, Nasty Boy Brian Knobbs, and Greg the Hammer Valentine. I thought it was just Jimmy Hart. I didn't realize that Greg Valentine was involved in it as well. The Lost episodes, it was released on DVD. It came out. When I told Mike we were doing this, he went, "Oh God, those Lost episodes." and they were something special, weren't they?
If you if you look at special in a certain perspective, then
with the inverted commas, they were special.
Yeah, I've got to do them. Let's throw them in early. Let's get them in early. Yeah, they're up. To be honest, I mean, what can you really say about it? I mean, that a lot of people don't already know. I mean, it's bizarre.
You know what I love about it is the fact that they really did take the proverbial out of wrestling promotions, didn't they? Because, you've got the WWE, which is World Wrestling Entertainment. You've got AEW, which is All Elite. You've got ECW, which is Extreme Championship. ROH, Ring of Honor. TNA, Total Nonstop. And yet XWF stands for, are you ready? XWF. It doesn't mean anything. It's like, what? Why? Why put all that? Anyway.
I mean, the name itself, Excitement Wrestling, is just a terrible, terrible, terrible name anyway.
Yeah, I think, if they could have gone Extreme Wrestling Federation with just the X, that would have given it a bit more lineage.
Maybe. But I think, to be fair, obviously, this was during a period where I was still a Hulkamaniac. This is before, my opinions of Hogan had changed a fair bit like they have in the last few years or so. I was absolutely amazed that he was a part of that, but I think at the same time, not surprised because in hindsight now, Hogan just wants a piece of every pie. He wants to just, throw himself into everything. And, I'm actually surprised he hasn't said in my younger self is going to hate me for saying this because he's going to be going, "You're such a Judas on Hogan now." I'm not surprised he's actually said in a documentary that the XWF was all his idea.
Well, I expect he has somewhere. It's just never come out. But let's get into it. This, as we said, is Legends and Champions, the podcast where we dive deep into the annals of professional wrestling history, celebrating the triumphs and dissecting the less than triumphant moments. So today we are strapping in for and trust me, we really are strapping in for a journey back to 1999, a year that for many represents the absolute peak of the wrestling boom. The Monday Night Wars were raging. The WWE and the WCW were pushing the boundaries. The industry was hotter than ever. It was into this vibrant yet fiercely competitive landscape that a new venture dared to step from the ashes. The heroes of wrestling.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the beautiful Casino Magic in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi, and welcome to a historic night, the Heroes of Wrestling. Are you ready for an explosive night of wrestling? Nothing like it, nothing ever. This is monumental stuff. 2,000 are jammed in here at the Casino Magic in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi, and they understand just how exciting this one's going to be. Randy Rosenblum with the dirty guy, Dutch Mantel.
That's me.
Dirty, this is going to be an unbelievable night for the Heroes of Wrestling.
Well, first of all, let's go with this. This is going to be an historical night for wrestling fans all over the world tonight. A lot of the stars that they haven't seen in recent years are all assembled here tonight for a one night only pay-per-view. It's going to be a great one. We're going to lead off with that.
A name that for many a seasoned fan conjures images not of glory, but of a truly spectacular, almost legendary failure.
Oh, in the words of Devon Dudley, my brother testify. Which way you come out of that? I'm sorry. What Andy has just told you is I was completely laughing my head off screen because obviously we're recording this video wise, but because the moment he said triumphant, that straight away, it completely lost me because honestly, this was everything but. Oh my goodness.
I mean, but the problem is though, on paper, the idea of this pay-per-view seemed simple. In fact, it was even, dare I say it, brilliant by capitalizing on that popularity of wrestlers from the 80s and the early 90s, this dream market, this dream matches.
It's almost like a real, now I'm stumbling over my words, I'm doing a U. It was almost, the concept's great because it's kind of like a real life version of the Legends of Wrestling video game, essentially, kind of, isn't it? But the only way I can really describe this is, it's like when your stomach starts to play up and it's this big build up and you're thinking, oh my God, this is going to be explosive. And then the only way to describe it is it ends up being a silent but violent one. And you go, is that it? Oh my God, that was such a disappointment and an underwhelmer.
And now I'm laughing my head off because the thought of this pay-per-view being compared to a stomach upset and sickness and diarrhea is pretty much what it is. It's when you said it's full and deadly. I think it was definitely wasn't silent and deadly.
But we've got to be realistic, haven't we? We got to poke fun at it, because there's not really much else you can do with this pay-per-view but poke fun at it.
I've missed you the last couple of weeks.
I've missed you too.
Now, this is what this is going to be like this week. It's the only way we can get through this. Now, the promoter was a guy called Bill Stone, and he genuinely believed that he'd found an untapped market and was surprised that the WWE hadn't already done a nostalgia show. In fairness, so am I, because, this was Vince. This was the era of capitalism. His ambition, and thank God this never materialized, was to launch a series of quarterly pay-per-views. Now, the first show needed 40,000 buys to greenlight the future. 40,000 buys for this card. But what transpired on October the 10th of 1999, it was anything but a dream. In fact, many have called it a nautical disaster. Many have called it one of the worst pay-per-views ever. Many have called it worse than ECW December to Dismember. So it must be bloody bad if it's worse than that. So what I want you to do, grab your popcorn, maybe something stronger. Jack Daniels is on offer at Sainsbury's at the moment. Trust me, you're going to need a couple of bottles or Jim Beam or any other bourbon whiskey that you want to get, because we're about to go deep into the catastrophic legacy of the Heroes of Wrestling. I don't know if I've got the energy for this. So This is what I want to do. I want to start at the beginning. I want to look at the conception and the creative vision. Now, Stone's plan was clear. Bring back the legends. Seriously, why did you pick the legends that you picked? Anyway, recruitment began in May of 1999. Sid Vicious initially was approached, even tasked with recruiting Michael Lombardi as the booker, and the entire future, as we said, hinges on this 40,000 buy rate. But almost immediately, as if this didn't spell doom, red flags started waving. Many of the promised names just didn't turn up to the venue. Sid Vicious signed an exclusive deal with WCW in June, making him unavailable. Even more critically, the original plans were for the commentary team, and in fairness, this would have really elevated it, to have been the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. Yeah, everybody's got a price. And the voice of professional wrestling, forget JR, Gordon Solie. But that fell apart at the last minute. Why? Solie got diagnosed with throat cancer. DiBiase was replaced by Dirty Dutch Mantel, which again at that point, if you look at the color analysis of this, you would think Dutch Mantel would be a really good person to have on the roster, right? Because of the fact that he's been around the business, he's been a booker, he's been part of creative, he's been a manager, he's been out there, he's got the knowledge. But this is where it all went a bit pear-shaped, Stefan. Do you know why? Do you know why?
Loads of them didn't have a bloody clue.
Exactly. But also, they made no public announcement about the changes before the show. And the lack of transparency really didn't build confidence. So they didn't say anything about the WCW guaranteed performers not appearing. They didn't say anything about Ted DiBiase not being on commentary. They didn't say anything about Gordon Solie. So the roster that did show up, if you look at the reviews, if you look at the critical analysis, people are showing, and these are quote descriptions, out of shape, badly injured, or under the influence, or so far past their prime as not to be able to do much in the ring.
I remember seeing it was a fan-made documentary over this is ages ago, a documentary on this pay-per-view, and every time it come down to talking about how out of shape some of the wrestlers were, it kept cut into a clip of Scott Steiner shouting "fat" like that every time. But the Rosenblum thing reminds me, do you remember when that Mike Adamle came in WWE and was on Raw, and what a car crash he was, because he just didn't get that? Kind of reminds me of the Mike Adamle era of WWE.
Let's quickly talk about that, because Randy Rosenblum, as you said, really became infamous. And I don't think I've ever seen him again compete. Thank God, commentary. He was widely criticized for having little or no knowledge of professional wrestling. I don't think you can even say little. I think
he said
none.
I remember there's one bit which I did. I loved Dutch Mantel at this point. There's at one point, I think it's during the opening match with, I think it was the Giannetti, the tag match against the Samoan SWAT team, where Giannetti pulls off an arm drag and he calls it a takedown slam. Well, Dutch Mantel just goes off on him, and I loved Dutch Mantel for that. But Randy Rosenblum, that is an 80s wrestler's name. Yeah, really. That's a proper 80s wrestler's name, that is. I mean, you know what you were saying about, they were surprised that, like Stone had said, he was surprised that the WWE hadn't have thought of doing like a nostalgia show.
Yeah.
Because the majority of the card probably hated Vince McMahon at that point anyway. So it wouldn't have been them anyway. So, I
mean, oh, God. I mean, just go back to Randy Rosenblum. He couldn't identify a drop kick.
No.
And then he admitted later on in press interviews that he was, and I quote, new to the sport, thrown into a tough situation, and that he accepted the role because, and again, and I quote, of a sizable dollar figure. Yeah.
Money. Talks.
Money talks. So the event itself, my friend, took place on October the 10th, 1999 at the Casino Magic Hotel and Casino in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi. The live attendance was more than TNA Unbreakable 2005. They had 2,300 people in that arena. And by God, did you know? The pay-per-view buys estimates range, and we don't have a concrete figure for this. Estimates range from 20 to 29,000 buys, far short of the 40 that was needed. But still, 20 to 29,000 idiots bought this pay-per-view at a cost of God knows what. It could have been $49.95. I would have been going back to my pay-per-view provider going, give me my money back.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just dreadful. I mean, if you look at the match card, they were saying this is all about redemption. This is all about settling the scores of yesteryear. And they were putting people in. Some of them had no...
Exactly. There was no history with most of them. Not really.
I know. I mean, it's like, you take that first match. That was the Samoan SWAT team with against Marty Jannetty.
Samu and Fatu, although Fatu wasn't Fatu, he was Tonga Kid because Fatu was Rikishi at that time in the WWE. Oh man! And
then you go back to Randy Rosenbloom. They put the graphic up, and he called the Samoan SWAT team Marty Jannetty. And it was just.
Oh,
I mean, I know Marty Jannetty's had a few problems, but you can't compare him to a 300-pound Samoan. That's just not fair.
No, it's not. And to be fair, this is one of the few pay-per-views that would make an epic drinking game at parties. It really would.
No, I think it'd be, rat-assed by the end of the first 5 minutes of the pre-show, let alone the first match.
Exactly. Which is a good thing because it means you're too paralytic to remember the rest of it.
Oh, thank God. I wish I was. I mean, when we... Do you know, people, right? I've got to be honest here. The person that you've got to blame for us doing this show is is Mike.
But I love him for it at the same time because, come off it, it's great to have these little quirky ones that are just flat out fun. And I have to say, let's drink. Don't forget, drink responsibly. And I'm joking about drinking games, but drink responsibly, people.
Yeah, so don't drink during this pay-per-view.
Exactly.
That's the responsible element of it. I mean, God, I don't even know where to go with this next. Oh, God.
Yeah, so Samoan SWAT team, Fatu, that's not really Fatu and Samu, against Marty Jannetty and the other guy. The other guy who I've just all of a sudden forgotten his name, but I remember he had a brief stint in WCW afterwards and then retired and then sadly passed away.
Yeah. I can't remember his name either, but I mean,
I feel guilty now.
I don't.
Tommy Rogers. Tommy Rogers. That was it.
Tommy Rogers. Yeah.
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thank God you're here. I guess I didn't have a clue about that.
It was bad enough because I watched that match literally yesterday.
Oh, Jesus. I mean, what got me was the to get right. Do you know what I found really funny about this pay-per-view, right? Was the fact that they used the formerly known as Yokozuna in the WWF, formerly known as the Bushwhackers, for the really creative title, The Men from Down Under.
It's a bloody stupid name, mate.
I mean, you could have called them a Whack-a-Bush.
Family show, Andy Evans.
Oh yeah.
Oh Jesus Christ! Oh,
it's 9:10 in the morning.
I can imagine because we like to. All of us who have got shows under Celebrate Wrestling, we obviously communicate each other. We all, praise each other and give each other feedback on our shows and that. I could just imagine that Mitch and Dimitri and Joe are going to be in absolute hysterics when they listen to this back.
Oh, it's better than one. I said one thing one year. I can't repeat it. I'll tell you off air what it was, but I said one thing one year that lasted for about 20 years. It's to do with Terry Funk and a rotisserie. I'll leave it there.
Yeah, so they could have been called Whack-a-Bush. I can kind of see why they weren't called that.
Can I just say to everybody listening, right? Even though we have kind of said this could be a drinking game, we legitimately have not drunk before we started this show. This is just how bad this show is.
bearing in mind, as I said to Andy, I watched most of the pay-per-view yesterday, and I watched the last hour or so this morning. So some of it's still raw, and I promise you I've not had a drink. And I'm not highly medicated either, not for anything like that. But if we're going along potential alternative names for some of these former wrestlers instead of formerly those, so we've got Wackerbush. Well, they might as well have just called Yokozuna Bonsai Barry or something, you know?
Bonsai Barry.
I mean, come on. I mean, it's ridiculous.
What, in all seriousness, right? Because we are going to be touching on something in a minute that is, we will bring it back and we will be professional. Really, not talking about this pay-per-view. There were legends on this show, legitimately. Tully Blanchard was
big
an absolute legend. Greg the Hammer Valentine, Rugged Ronnie Garvin, the Superfly Jimmy Snuka. Despite what many people might think about him now, Jimmy Superfly Snuka, but. To go back to the point that we made at the top of the show about Bill Short wondering why WWE didn't do this type of nostalgic gimmick, is this exact reason. They're legends for a reason. And once you get to a certain point, you can't perform to the level that you did. So actually, apart from the payday, are you damaging your legacy of what you've done? Take someone like Tully Blanchard. Are you damaging your legacy by going in and doing this one-shot money deal just to get another 5 minutes of fame on a card that has been, and a show that has been widely criticized, as we said, as one of the worst ever?
Yeah, it's an absolute train wreck. We're poking fun at it because that's all you can do. Is you? I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not completely heartless. I think no. Sorry to disappoint some. My alter ego is, but I'm not. I feel. If I look at it from the talent perspective, I feel for them in many ways because obviously, for most, they're at that. Their careers have winded down. Their heyday, for the most, are kind of, behind them. It's having that final grasp at something and it becomes a complete disaster. That's really got to hit you hard, and I do feel for them. I mean, obviously, there are some names that are listed that, went on to have, success, not as in-ring competitors, but still in the business. I mean, you look at Tully Blanchard, he had a decent run in AEW, with guys there. You look at Jake. Jake's had that rebirth. He's, thanks to DDP and, got himself back, on back on the wagon and getting himself, rehabilitated. And we've seen more of Jake Roberts over the past sort of 5 years or so than what we had done for many years previous. Some are unfortunately not with us anymore. So it's... When you look at it from that perspective and that, I do feel for the talent. I mean, but how much blame goes on the talent when, at the end of the day, they're just picking up their check. They're picking up their money. They're there to just try and do a job. The promoter knows that, can clearly see that they're out of shape or they've got personal demons or addiction issues or, they're of a certain age now at that point. So, they're not going to turn down that money. And unfortunately, it went out and it was a platform to air it. And that was the problem, is I don't think this would have been as legendary as it was if it hadn't have been a pay-per-view. If it had just been like a house event,
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the problem, it's not widely available now. You can find it on YouTube, which is how, obviously how we watched it. We've got the YouTube link, not the best quality in the world, but kind of plays a part.
It's watchable, which is more than what could be said for the pay-per-view.
I kind of think it plays into the whole ethos of the pay-per-view, right? It's not a very watchable link. It is watchable. It's not the best one in the world, but it's not a very good pay-per-view. So it kind of works.
Plus, it was 1999, so you
can tell.
You can tell it's the end of the 90s.
Yeah, no HD, you can really pick it up these days, right? I noticed that anyway.
You can quite clearly see what's going on. On the show, unfortunately.
I think what's sad about this, and we're going to talk about the big incident in just a moment, but I just want to pick up on something that you said earlier on. Some of them are no longer here, and actually, if you look at the card, you know, Captain Lou Albano, Yokozuna, King Kong Bundy, one of the Bushwhackers, just top of my head, right? Just the first few that the Sheik.
I'm Sheik recently, a couple of years ago,
yeah. You know, for many, this Jim the Anvil Neidhart is another
Nikolai Volkov.
Is he dead?
Yeah, Nikolai Volkov passed a few years ago.
Really?
And Jim Neidhart.
Yeah, Jim Neidhart just said. When you look at this card, for many of these performers, this was their last showing.
Nikolai Volkov passed on the 29th of July 2018.
Oh, okay, thanks. I thought it was Boris Dikov.
Yeah. I just want to quickly just interject with something. So please forgive me just for sharing this. For me, it's a heartwarming little piece about Nikolai Volkov. In 2015, I attended a WrestleCon in London, and Nikolai Volkov was one of the guests, and I met him. And during the event, I'd literally just come back from having a photo shoot with Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, and all of a sudden you can hear over the PA system, you can hear Nikolai Volkov just like tapping the mic and just going, attention. He said, can we all have silence and please be upstanding for the Russian national anthem? Now, anyone that watched Nikolai Volkov in the 80s would know that they were synonymous for being interrupted and not showing respect every time he would try and sing the national anthem. He sang the national anthem from start to finish, got a massive ovation, and you could see he was clearly moved. My heart was so full of warmth for him because I was like, he got that respect. He got amongst fans. He got to sing the entire Russian national anthem, and he looked so moved. It was absolutely beautiful. It's a beautiful moment and a privilege to be a part of. And I've actually got a clip somewhere that I recorded of it. I'll have to dig it out at some point. But it was heartwarming and it was lovely. And I always had a soft spot for Nikolai Volkov. He was a bad guy, but he was a good guy, and that's one of the things I loved him. He was a warm, very humble human being. I just wanted to throw that in there. So yeah.
Oh, nice throwback story. And I think you hear a lot of things about the guys backstage, and it's a testament to a good worker who is a heel to get the crowd to hate you. But clean evolution. All right, let's do it. I'm not looking forward to this bit because The defining moment of the night, and quite possibly the most tragic incident, involved the man that you've spoken about previously, Jake the Snake Roberts. And for those of you listening to this, I don't need to tell you who Jake the Snake Roberts was, but if you are new to retro old school wrestling, in a nutshell, he was one of the most, because he's not dead. He is one of the most legendary performers in the industry, known for his cerebral prowess. He was the cerebral assassin before Triple H, right?
Agreed.
He was a psychological master. He could cut a promo, get into your soul, get into your mind better than most, right? In fact, we will be doing, and I keep saying this every week, there's another episode being added to the list, and then we always forget about it. But we will be doing something on Jake Roberts because you could literally spend hours talking about the man behind the snake, right? And breaking down the promos and breaking down the fact that if his demon, an alternate scenario, thanks guys, if he hadn't fallen to the demons, what would his career have looked like? You've got to think he would have been a world champion at multiple times in his career. But for this show, though, he was booked with the intention of capitalizing on a recent resurgence in popularity because of attempts at his sobriety, because of Beyond the Mat. But, and this is where Bill Short needs to take ownership. Shortly before the event, he suffered a drug relapse, appearing visibly wasted and intoxicated. His pre-match promo was described as rambling, inebriated, understandably abysmal, filled with incoherent gambling metaphors because they were at a casino. And actually, when I watched that, I forgot how bad that promo was, and actually how concerning that promo was.
He's with our man, Michael St. John.
Thank you, gentlemen. Back here I have a man of legendary proportion, the man Jake the Snake Roberts. He is a man that you all recognize. He's a legend. Come on, Jake, get on in here. The folks want to hear from you.
You know what I'm saying right now is this. You know, you go to a casino, and everybody says, well, gosh, a casino, you should gamble. Let me tell you something, Anvil. You don't want to play cards with me because I'll cheat. Okay? I cheat. You want to play 21? I got 22. You want to play blackjack? I got 2 of those too. You want to play aces and eights? Maybe I got too many of those too. Bottom line is this. You do not gamble with me. The only time you should gamble is this. Listen to me. When you walk in a casino and you want to gamble, the main thing is you should realize this. To gamble, you must accept losing. I don't accept losing. And neither does Damien. Damien, my friend. My friend Damien is right here. You see Damien?
Yeah, he just stuck his head out at us.
Nice pile of snake, huh?
Oh.
You don't want to see us, do you?
Well, I
Let me
know.
show you something.
Yeah, that's
Let me
okay,
show you
Jake.
No, I tell you what, Anvil. Go ahead, Anvil. Roll the dice. Mr. Cameraman, get your ass back up here. Hello? I'm talking to you. Get the camera back up here. That is not what you need to worry about, Anvil. Because the bottom line is this. When the DDT comes, then the snake comes out. Worry about the DDT. 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 Think about it.
A man of his word, Jake the Snake Roberts. Back to ringside.
Yeah.
During his entrance, he engaged in, and this is a family show, but I'm going to be doing this anyway, unsettling and inappropriate gestures, including an uncomfortable interaction with the female fans where he physically touched her. Now, this is coming from live event reports from the event. He also simulated a sexual act with a snake and kissed it. Now, the main event originally was planned as being 2 separate singles matches, and on the fly was turned into an impromptu tag team match. Now, that was King Kong Bundy and Jim the Anvil Neidhart against Yokozuna and Jake the Snake Roberts. The 2 matches should have been Bundy versus Yoko, Anvil versus Snake. But the big problem to this was the protection of the talent, because Roberts was unable to properly take bump or even execute a basic move. He also seemed to, and I think you can actually get rid of that word seem to, because just watching the pay-per-view and watching the match, you can clearly identify he had no idea what was going on.
No, you're right. You don't even need to describe it. You can see it. It's clear as day. And that promo, I mean, you see the condition he's in during that promo. And as I said to you off air before we went, I said to you, I think they need to, the booker needs to take accountability, because there's no way, in any way, shape or form, he's going out there. It's not. And you referenced about Jeff Hardy and his involved with his main event title match against Sting. And I said to you, what I didn't agree with them allowing him to go out there. I would have sanctioned him backstage behind the scenes, and I would have stripped him of the title. That's how I would have dealt with the Jeff Hardy situation. But
I think what makes that situation worse is, I mean, that was what, 2011, something like that, 2010, 2011, around that sort of time. You know, that is years after this. Mm. And seeing what, someone like Jake Roberts was doing. So as much as I've always been a big fan of TNA and always been a big supporter of TNA, I think they dropped the ball there. And I agree with you. They should have pulled him. And I think they called that finish on the fly. And we will talk about that at another time when we look at that pay-per-view. But they called that finish on the fly with Sting doing the Scorpion Death Drop and getting the win, the Stinger Splash and stuff. But going back to this match, though, what really hurt this one, apart from everything else that was going on, was because it was thrown together on the fly, there was no finish. none of the wrestlers involved were willing to take a fall. In fact, both King Kong Bundy and Yokozuna had it written into their contracts that they could not be pinned or made to submit. Now, in a desperate attempt to salvage it, a production crew member was sent out to ringside to improvise some sort of a finish. The show then abruptly went off the air really quickly, as Roberts was reportedly in the process of stripping off and getting naked.
Yeah.
Now, you said earlier on the promoter should have accepted responsibility. The Bill Stone later did accept responsibility, stating that he should have known that Jake was not a stable guy. He found his actions to be lewd and admitted it really bothered him. And this tragic intersection of Jake Roberts' personal struggles and the performances highlights a massive failure in duty of care towards a vulnerable talent. You know, not just from the independent scene, but also from the industry. And actually, what it does for me is raises a profound, I'm HR, right? So everything has some sort of profound reason. It's what we do. A profound ethical question about exploiting performers' personal challenges for entertainment. And the contractual demands of talent using creative control to prevent pins or submissions, which is restricting that booking for flexibility, which ultimately forces this chaotic and unsatisfied conclusion. I mean, ethically, we touched on it with Jeff Hardy a few minutes ago. Ethically, this should never have happened. This match should have been pulled. It was already a cluster. They should have finished it at the penultimate main event or moved the card around. For anyone to send somebody out in that condition should not have happened. You easily could have made a three-way dance between Jim Neidhart, Yokozuna, and King Kong Bundy, and you could have kept Jake Roberts off the card. You could have switched things around. You could have brought Too Cold Scorpio into it. You could have moved it and done the Samoan SWAT team against King Kong Bundy and Yokozuna. Nobody at this point knew whether these guys were going to be coming in as face or heels, right?
Yeah.
You knew from the characters from the WWF, but you didn't know how they were going to be booked. And some of them are repackaged with this new manager guy who's a complete dork and Captain Lou Albano, right? So just even sitting here now, reading it, going, there are 4 or 5 options you easily could have done to restructure a card to protect the value and the performance.
If you look at the card itself, I mean, definitely, to be fair, you could shake that card up and pair people with different opponents and that, and actually it could potentially have been a better card. And it definitely could have worked. I mean, you could have looked at maybe like the most notable names from the WWE, for example. I mean, you could have potentially have removed Mighty Jannetty from the opening tag match against the Samoan SWAT team. Maybe paired someone else with Tommy Rogers. Maybe have had, I don't know, for example, Yokozuna and Mighty Jannetty against Neidhart and Bundy, for example. I mean, the fact that I know that Yokozuna teamed with Owen Hart in the WWE, they were tag team champions. They could have actually have had Yoko and Jim as Jim Neidhart as tag partners, because Bundy in WWF was always really known for being a heel anyway. So, you know, they could have had him in there and maybe put him in there with with someone else, mate. Or they could have actually scrapped one of the match and made it a 6-man tag. Maybe Bob Orton Jr., King Kong Bundy, and I don't know, maybe one of the others against Jim Neidhart, Yokozuna, and Superfly Jimmy Snuka. I mean, there are ways around it that they could have done.
Yeah, there's multiple options that they could have done to have changed the card, but I just think that, you know, he took responsibility for it later, right? You have a responsibility at the time. I mean, you've been involved in UK independent. I've been involved in independent. Yeah. Mitch and Mike are involved in Canadian independence. And I can pretty much guarantee that if we were all backstage and you saw someone in that situation, we wouldn't let them out.
No,
because it's not just protecting the performers in the ring, it's protecting the fans who are at ringside.
100%. And also, I mean, obviously, we weren't backstage. We don't know what personal relationships were like between the talent over the years. I mean, I should imagine that during that period of Jake's life, he probably didn't have a lot of friends at the time that wanted to be associated with him, which is a shame. Again, thank God for DDP, because as I said, with DDP and his yoga and his ways, he gave us Scott Hall for an extended period of time where we probably would have lost Scott a lot sooner. And he's done the same with Jake. And, I'm thankful, I got to meet Scott Hall. I loved being around Scott. And last year in Philly, I finally got to meet Jake Roberts. And to the Jake Roberts I got to meet face-to-face compared to the Jake Roberts during that period of his life, the one you saw on Beyond the Mat, the one that you saw the fan footage of him with his demons and that, is Jake seems very relaxed now. And that's one thing I do like. He seems at peace with himself. He seems at peace with life, that he's content, he's relaxed, he's happy. And now, he's just going to do whatever he does now till, for the rest of his life. I know he's been in the hospital recently, which he's fine, which is good. But it takes a lot to go through those demons and those addictions, to know that you're in the public eye, to know that people are going to have a certain perception of you, to hurt and disappoint a lot of people, to maybe look back on that and think, oh my God, what did I do? And have a lot of shame for that. But to redeem yourself, ultimately, to put in the hard work, to turn it around, to say, hey, look, I'm not making any excuses for the person I was. It was BS, the way I was. Addictions are for some an illness and that. But here I am. I'm trying to do the best I can to give people a better opinion of me for the rest of my days, and I applaud that. But I mean, we've seen. I mean, the thing is as well. I know a lot of focus on it is because of the pay-per-view itself was a cluster, as you said, and. And obviously the name Jake Roberts. I mean, people that don't necessarily watch wrestling still know the name Jake the Snake. But we've seen it with people over the years. We've seen it with Justin Credible as well. He's not the only one, but I think it's because he's one of those pinnacle names that are up there. That's why so much gets put, focus gets put on what he's done and where he's gone wrong.
Yeah, totally. And I couldn't agree with you more. I think just picking up on one thing you said there about he looked at peace and he was at peace. I think when you get to a certain point where you realize that your career is done, and you can look back and you haven't got any pressures or public or business professional sort of restrictions anymore, you kind of let a massive weight go off your shoulders, and part of that is mental health and well-being and everything else. So I think he has done amazingly well to turn himself around. I had the pleasure of interviewing Roberts before on TWS a few years ago, and it was one of the most intriguing interviews I've ever had, and the reason for that is because you didn't know what you were going to get. Now, normally when you interview a talent, and Mike will tell you more about this, and Mitch and Dimitri will, you get the person. You don't always get the performer, right? The worst one I ever did was Scott Norton, who kayfabed me the entire time. Ice Train was Ice Train, and he kayfabed me the entire interview. And same with Bushwhacker Luke. Did the same thing. He kayfabed me. But with Jake Roberts, you didn't know what you were going to get, and within the first, I would say, 5 minutes of that 35-40 minute interview, it was Jake from the 80s. It was the cerebral Jake. There was a lot of swearing in it, I'm not going to lie, from Jake, but it was Jake recapping stories from the 80s, talking about the feud with Rick Rude, talking about. But
that's what you want to hear. That's what you want to hear. Yeah.
And I wish, looking back on it now, I asked him questions about, the drug abuse, and asked him questions about Beyond the Mat, and he doesn't regret doing Beyond the Mat. From what I remember of the interview,
I think it's a good thing he did, because it allowed us that insight.
But yeah, I think it was a wake up for him as well, right? But what I the regret that I've got with that interview is that I didn't sit him down and ask him about this, because I would love to have sat down and said to him, what was going through your mind when you look at this now and you watch this? Have you watched this back, first of all? And if you have watched it back, what goes through your mind now when you see it? Because as much as you can easily blame the person for being in that condition, that person's got a demon, right? You don't blame Eddie Guerrero for the demons. You don't blame Jeff Hardy for having the demons. You give them help and support. But that's that match. Enough on that match, because
I just wanted to say, do you know what? We're talking here about Jake Roberts' demons and his condition and state of well-being during that match, that show. Yeah. And the most ironic thing is he's the only surviving member of that main event.
I know. I mean, you talk about a tongue-in-cheek moment. That is scary, right?
You know, and you're talking about that, and I'll be completely. I've got no embarrassment. I'll be completely open and that. I'm feeling a bit emotional talking about Jake and that, because meeting Jake in Philly last year was a big moment for me, because I've spoken candidly about my Hulkamaniac days. Being a childhood, Hogan was my hero. Yeah. But I absolutely loved Jake when I was a kid. He was the second action figure I ever had. I had my Hogan one, and I had Jake. I loved the fact he came with a rubber snake as well. And and when I watched Beyond the Mat, I remember crying watching Beyond the Mat for the very first time. I remember the day it came out and I bought it on VHS, and I cried watching that, because I looked at Jake and I thought, a guy that had it all, that is still to this day held in such the biggest high regard for the way he carries his promos, the influence he's had on some of the biggest talkers in the business. And you see him at his most raw. You're learning about his strained relationship with his father. Yeah. You talk about the strained relationship he had with his daughter, and you see the fact that you can quite clearly tell he openly admits he has a problem, and he doesn't want to be like that, and he doesn't want to be a screw up, and he wants to be a better father and things like that. But that addiction is there, and that need for to get that fix is evident. He doesn't hide behind that. But to meet him, just like as I met Scott Hall, to sit there, shake his hand, talk to him for a short period of time, and just to see what in a better place he is, and that is heartwarming. And I think sometimes, we do. It's one of those things where you do forget that these are human beings, that they have their own problems in their lives and that. And I think sometimes, fans, the media can be a little too critical and a little bit too less up, not full of understanding. I applaud, Jake for where he is now. It's heartbreaking to see the list of those names that are no longer with us. It really is actually really, really, it's hard to accept that so many of those names are not with us anymore. And that's just not just the main event.
Let's move on from that. We're going to talk about two other areas before we wrap this up. So let's look at the business and the failure of the business, because as we put, the financial performance of Heroes of Wrestling was, simply put, a disaster. With 20 to 29,000 buys, it was drastically short of the 40K. And Bill Stone himself acknowledged this by saying it was all but dooming the program's future. That was the card, my friend. The abysmal outcome led to the immediate cessation, closing down of the league's operations. Heroes of Wrestling became a one and done, effectively immediately died after the end of that. Now, let's put the buy rates into perspective, okay? Because WrestleMania 10 in 1994, bear in mind, this is 5 years earlier, did 420,000 buys worldwide, globally. So domestically, Heroes of Wrestling did 20 to 29. A lower tier WWE pay-per-view like In Your House 4, for example, back in 1995, did 90,000 buys. Modern independent shows like All In are doing over 160,000 buys. So Heroes of Wrestling really performed at a mere fraction of even the lowest tier events of its time, which, when you look at it on paper, I actually got to give them a little bit of credit. Don't want to do this because we're comparing this to the WWF global. 420,000 buys worldwide in 1994. Global, 90,000 buys in 1995 for In Your House 4. Domestic, 20 to 29,000 buys in the US. So, yes, they didn't get the 40,000 buy rate that they wanted. Yes, the card was a sham. Yes, the card was controversial, but actually give them some credit that they managed to get that many buys. That is an achievement with no TV product, with no marketing, with no going purely on the name value of the legends that they had. Now, yes, that could be because they were advertising some WCW talent. Totally. But there is an argument to say that they still had ex-WWF and WCW talent because they all came from that.
Yeah.
But this market that we're in, this niche market, a product that people consider to be a low quality or a cash grab, which is what people are saying this was, won't get support regardless of how prosperous the industry is. And it also leads to conversations about the talent management dynamics. You know, Stone has accepted the blame, saying that, well, some things were out of my control. He should have known that, going back to Jake Roberts, wasn't a stable guy. And what this does is prove it's a massive failure in talent vetting and crisis management. Okay? Because what this looks to me is, though, the guy had no idea what he was doing. It sounds like it's a fan coming together to put a show together with no idea of the inner workings of what it does, right? The other effect was sort of the contractual demands of King Kong Bundy and Yokozuna. A stark contrast to how a highly structured talent relations department would work. You know, independent contracting often means a lack of long-term employment or health insurance or collective bargaining, which can pressure wrestlers to take risky bookings. And that is why some of these people took it. And really, if you look at where it launched in this Monday Night War era. Intense competition between WWE and WCW, high quality competition, high quality matches, high quality storylines, high quality production. And the era of the Monday Night Wars era is game changing, right? It's revolutionary. It's what we call, I guess, the changing of the tide, the changing of the guard between the 80s generation to the 90s generation, and then the Attitude Era. When that came in, that's the modern era. And it just didn't last. They tried to capitalize on it, and it did not work.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I'm just going to read out the notes, right? The people, honestly, you know, the more I look at the card, the more I realise that the people that are not with us anymore, you know, if we go for it, you know, so Seeker is not with us. Tommy Rogers is not with us. Sensational Sherry's not with us. George Steele's not with us. One of the Bushwhackers is not with us. Forgive me, I can't remember which one. Nikolai Volkov is not with us. John Cheatham, who was with Abdullah the Butcher, he's not with us either. Captain Lou Albano and Jimmy Snooker are not with us anymore. Jim Neidhart, King Kong Bundy, Yokozuna are not with us. You know, it's amazing, isn't it? It really is. When you look at that, and you know, we see they get their passings get announced. Sometimes WWE do their little in memoriam thing, and you know. And then you kind of, some of them you sort of forget. And then we do shows like this where we talk about these matches and these names pop up, and we look at the match cards like we did with one of the WrestleManias that we did, and realise that, you know, the majority of that WrestleMania are no longer with us. And it really does, you know, you're going to hate me because it's been a few shows since I've done it where I've mentioned our age. Yeah, I know. You know, guys that are in our early 40s, you know, it really is. It is our childhood. It is our childhood, and you know, and it is crazy. You know, now that they're no longer here to, you know, to share their stories with us anymore, or see them pop up on a, you know, Hall of Fame or a Legends thing now. And yeah, do you know? To be fair, if I had been them, I know it was a disaster, and like you said, you got to give them credit because of the domestic buys. You know, it's not too bad domestic buy rate. If they could have changed their structure slightly and had said to the fans, look, you know, we apologise. We know this isn't the show we wanted to give you. We know we could have done better. Right, we're going to, for our next show, you know, maybe take a year off instead of doing the full quarterly, and say, look, you know, we're going to bring you this back, but we're going to obviously bring different talent. We're going to work with, we're going to give you matches which are, you know, better suited. And that, I would have had another crack. I would have gone, do you know what, we'll go out there and we'll give it another go. Look, you know, let's face it, no one's perfect. Sometimes the first isn't always the best. There's always room for improvement. And they could have tried again. And if it had got more success, because even if the buy rate had been similar, those eyes would have been on that product and gone, oh, that is much better compared to the very first one. And that, yeah, you're onto something. Yeah, that's much better. Word gets around and people can go, okay, well, I'm glad the second one was better. Okay, all right, I'll buy into this. Okay, let's show us what you're going to do with the third. The interest could build up. But the thing is, they need to stop making silly mistakes, i.e. Rosenblum on the microphone. You've got to get on commentary. You've got to get people in the door that know what they're doing, that know the product, that know these individuals, can call the moves, you know, tell the stories. So, yeah, you know, it was a sham for many reasons, as we pointed out, but I think they could have maybe have gone again and tried to, but they didn't. So, yeah.
I mean, as we look to wrap this up now for this week, I mean, we've gone longer than I expected us to.
We've had a laugh. We've covered everything. We've had a laugh. We've poked fun at it. We've not taken bits of it seriously because you can't. And then we've gone into the deep, meaningful, serious stuff. And we're wrapping up. We've done good. I
mean, in fairness, Heroes of Wrestling, it stands as the most singular, catastrophic event in wrestling history. You know, let's put it that way. It was a perfect storm: poor planning, out of shape talent, disastrous commentary, and a truly, as we've said, tragic main event.
And people call Ric Flair's final match pay-per-view a shambles. Some have called it the worst, haven't they?
I didn't think that was that bad until it got to the main event. The card was pretty good. You know, the poor organization, the poor decision making, the shuttle production with flaws. The Jake Roberts incident should never have happened. Ultimately, it was an undeniable disaster, but it occupies a unique position in wrestling history, albeit a negative one, because what it does for me is endures as a stark tale for any nostalgia-driven promotion. It's illustrating quite clearly the risks of attempting to capitalize on the past glories without that meticulous planning or professional management or rigorous quality control. It serves as a benchmark for the worst pay-per-view ever. And it's frequently discussed in groups that I've been involved in conversations over the years with fellow co-hosts and all that type of thing, that it's a mixture of morbid curiosity, genuine sadness, and ironic humor. Yep. It underscores the fragile relationship between wrestling fans and their heroes, demonstrating how nostalgic appeal can transform into such a level of disappointment. But as I finish this up in my Jerry Springer style statement, take care of yourself and each other. The enduring discussion in memory of Heroes of Wrestling, despite being a commercial and critical flop, illustrates a very weird phenomenon. That some failures are so spectacular and emblematic that perversely, they achieve a form of immortality in a collective memory. It's not remembered for its heroes. It's not remembered for its dream matches. It's remembered for its undeniable train wreck, becoming widely recognized reference point for everything you do not do in professional wrestling, highlighting that infamy can be a powerful, albeit negative, form of legacy. And beyond the immediate losses that Heroes of Wrestling inflicted broader unseen costs, it risked tarnishing the legacy of some of the heroes, specifically Jake, whose struggles became part of the event's lasting narrative. It also delivered a poor product. It eroded fan trust in future nostalgia-based ventures, and it serves as a potent reminder that reputation, once compromised to that level, is exceedingly difficult to restore. And that, my friends, is the story of Heroes of Wrestling. A pay-per-view that promised legends and delivered a lesson.
I bet you got all that from a Hallmark card, didn't you?
I wrote that. I actually wrote that. I wrote
brilliant.
it. I wrote
Ladies and gentlemen, Andy Evans. That do you know that was brilliant. I'll give credit where credit's due. That was brilliant. I applaud you, sir. I applaud you, sir. That was That sums it up. That sums it up perfectly. It really does. It really, really does. You know, and as wrestling fans, we all want these pay-per-views, these specials, these one-offs, and that to be a success. We want the talent that we loved of yesteryear to have their, you know, a fitting swan song, you know, but it doesn't always happen, and it's not always the talent. You know, we know there are, you know, Jake was responsible for Jake's things, but he should have never been put in that position. And you know, sometimes it's you know not necessarily the talent that you need to point the fingers at. Other people need to take accountability, which you know has been the case in this. So yeah, it's I thought that was beautifully wrapped up there, Andy. That was very well done, sir. So yeah, but yeah, I know we're going to wrap it up now. I just want to give a shout out to Mitch and Dimitri for another brilliant alternative commentary take. Honestly. Fantastic as always.
Right. No, stop.
Yeah, I've got to, and I'm going to give props as well for Joe because obviously Dave Meltzer's been on a holiday the past couple of weeks. Joe Aguinaldo's been filling in and getting involved with Mike and that, and I thought Joe's contributed brilliantly. It's been brilliant listening to Joe as well. So you know, yeah, all the rest of the Celebrate Wrestling guys, I applaud you for another fantastic couple of weeks. Well, I've been away.
Joe Aguinaldo is a legend.
Yeah, he is. You guys have kept me while I've been feeling really, really ill. You guys have made me chuckle. You made me smile and feel a bit better about things as well. And as have you, Andy, flying solo. So yeah, thanks, guys.
Nah, we're all here to do it, but never give Mitch and Dimitri compliments. I mean, they said no, never do it because they said Blackpool Combat Club needed to be renamed, and now we've got the Death Riders. So thanks for that.
Yeah, but he said they needed to be renamed, which is correct. It's just they just then gave them another terrible name. That's not on Dimitri. That's not on Dimitri. So I've got to say, it's not on Dimitri. But yeah, and also a massive.
I just want to jump in. You can finish out. You can have for 1 week. You can have the last word, right? I want to jump in with two things. Number one, you always have to love Mitch and Dimitri. Do you know why?
Why?
It's not because they're Greek. It's not because they run the Greek World Order. It's not because they do one of the best shows in professional wrestling podcasting. It's because they support the one, the only true goddess of professional wrestling.
Oh no,
Nikita Lyons.
Jesus Christ! Do you know? I knew it was only going to be a matter of time before she was going to start getting brought up again.
Bear in mind, I never raised her. Mitch and Dimitri raised her.
I know
on ACT, and actually the match that she had on Impact, as we're taping this and breaking the fourth wall, with Misha Slamovich against Tessa Blanchard and the formerly Alicia Fox, was very good. And Nikita Lyons is an amazing athlete, great look, love her to bits, injury prone, so she'll be next on the release queue. But I'm surprised. In fairness, I'm surprised she hasn't been released already. I'm surprised she's still there, considering she spent the last couple of years at home. But
that's true.
You know, Tegan Knox, Nixon Newell got released, and she's had about the same amount of time as injury.
I'm starting to think, unfortunately, I mean, people who might, we'll talk about breaking the fourth wall as well. Obviously, some people may be aware, Zoe Stark's injury again, another what looks like a bad knee injury. And I wouldn't be surprised if she ends up released. And, you know, it's a shame because she's good talent. I know people are very divided on Zoe Stark. I think she does offer something. I just think it's just trying to find that correct fit for her. But I think, you know, with her injury issues, I wouldn't be surprised if she's another one that
maybe what we'll do
ends up released.
We're recording this in the week that Zoe Stark got the injury on Monday Night Raw in the MITB qualifier against Rhea Ripley and Kairi Sane. Maybe what we'll do in a few weeks' time, because we've got quite a menu of shows already lined up. We're doing NXT TakeOver next week, the first NXT TakeOver. We've got the Legacy of Sabu that we're going to be doing as well, which will be a highly emotive one. We've got Jake the Snake Roberts we want to do. We want to do a full show on Bobby Heenan. But what would be, I think, really good is to look at the past 4 or 5 years of those talent that have been released by the WWE and actually kind of go, where have they gone and what have they done?
Yes.
Because, you know, some of them, you take Chris Van Vliet, right? Insight with Chris Van Vliet on podcast. Matt Cardona was on there recently. And Matt Cardona did a tweet when that last round of releases occurred, basically saying you've got 3 options. You can coast off your name and get the big money paychecks on the independent scene. You could, you know, not do anything and try and get back to WWE, or you could take a massive gamble, believe on yourself, reinvent yourself continuously, have a lot of fun, make a lot of money, and make a big name on the independent scene and get yourself back to WWE if that's where you want to go, but not realizing that you don't need to go there. And Cardona is a prime example. So I think in a few weeks' time, that would be a really interesting show.
I agree. Yeah, I think that'd be a really, really good show to cover. It'll be very, very interesting to, you know, in hindsight, to actually, from a retrospective, actually see where some of these talent have ended up. Because we already know, you know, straight off topic that, you know, some of them are now walked away from wrestling completely and have gone down other ventures. Randy Rose. So yeah.
When we do this, we'll put a time scale in. We'll let you know what the time scale is going to be. It might be 5 years. It might be 7. It might be what. We'll put a time scale in. We'll pick out some of them. We'll let you know who the releases were. We'll pick out some of the bigger ones. We've got to talk about Matt Cardona, you know, because he is obviously, and Chelsea Green was another standout. But next week on this show, we will be breaking down the first NXT takeover, which took place a few months following NXT Arrival. Now, people are going to be saying to you, I've already been asked this, why are you not doing Arrival? Why are you not doing Arrival first? Why do we have to do the pay-per-views in order? We're going to do TakeOver. Then we might do Arrival later. Then we might do TakeOver London. Then we might do TakeOver Canada. Then we might do Unbreakable. Then we might do this. Then we might do that. Then we might do this. Then we might do that. Then we might slap me in the face and stop me from going might like this and might like that. I don't know. You've got the last word. Go for it. We're wrapping up.
Yeah, again, thank you everyone for tuning in. We love the fact that you love us. Again, any feedback, anything you want us to cover and that, go to our Facebook page, Celebrate Wrestling, and give us your thoughts and opinions and what you would like to see us cover on a nice little retrospective on any champions or pay-per-views, anything along those lines. As I said, great to be back. And let's do this.
Let's legends out of here. Hashtag legends. Hashtag. That just buggered it up. Right. I've got the last word again, so I'm going to throw it back to you. Last word. Take us out.
Okay, that's been Andy Evans. That's been Stefan Bennett. This is Legends and Champions. That was Heroes of Wrestling. And we'll see you at the matches. Take care. Bye-bye.
Stole my catchphrase.
This has been Legends and Champions with Andy Evans. Thank you for listening.